Thank you very much for joining us. Al-Shabaab militants in Somalia claim they have executed a Kenyan Defence Forces soldier in their custody. The militants warn they will not hesitate to execute 5 other Kenyans held hostage in the next 3 days if Kenyan government officials do not unconditionally release Somali nationals held in Kenya and Uganda on terrorism charges. KTN cannot authoritatively confirm if indeed the militants carried out their threat. But last year, we ran a story about a wife who had reported about her missing soldier husband, and today we revisited her. KTN's Dennis Onsarigo reports.
It's only last year that Rose Kangogo, the wife to Private Jonathan Kipkosgei Kangogo, informed the world that her husband had gone missing. Rose told KTN he went missing while on a mission to supply relief food while serving as a military officer with the Kenyan Defence Forces. Exactly 1 year and a day later, the Somali-based Al-Shabaab terror organization has announced it has executed a Kenyan Defence Forces soldier. In Kapteren village in Elgeyo Marakwet, the wife to Jonathan Kipkosgei Kangogo 1 year ago spoke about the captured husband was lost for words.
Sasa hiyo sisi tunawachia Mungu na lawama itaenda kwa serikali. Kama hawezi kuwasaidia kama watoto. Hata baada ya huyu mtu hata kama wamesema wamemaliza, sasa tutafanya namna gani? Hakuna namna. Wenyewe tu ndio hata hiyo damu yake itakuwa inafuata hawa. Damu itakuwa inafuata hawa serikali wenyewe wanasimamia hiyo maneno mpaka sasa.
The family of the KDF soldiers says they're still hopeful their kin is safe.
Na kama yule Mungu huwa tunaomba kila siku ndio yeye anaweza. Kama ameweza kwa hold for 1 year 8 months. Huyo tunajua one day one time ataturudishia. Na kama hao watawamaliza, si sasa Mungu pia atajua.
In a statement, Al-Shabaab claims to have killed the soldier and have promised to go ahead and execute the 5 other Kenyans in their custody. The chilling message has a still photo of the Kenyan soldier, but the militants do not say where and when it was taken. The photo appears to have been cropped from one earlier released by the terrorists. The militants are also yet to show if indeed the execution took place or not. KTN cannot confirm the execution, but the Department of Defense says they are aware of the execution claims advanced by Al-Shabaab. DOD spokesman Bogito Ngeri says KDF will not negotiate with terrorists and efforts are being made to have the 5 Kenyans back home.
My dear Kenyans, my life and the life of our fellow Kenyan prisoners depend on how you respond to this message.
KTN reported Thursday that Al-Shabaab had promised to carry out executions of Edward Yesemule, a district officer of Buruderi district kidnapped alongside an immigration official last year. Al-Shabaab is still holding 3 Kenyan civilians and 2 KDF soldiers. Denso Zarigo, KTN Prime.
Well, we promise to follow up on that story as and when it unfolds. On to politics now, and one last hurdle in the way of the Jubilee Alliance's march to State House is out of the way. A 5-judge bench unanimously dismissed a petition filed at the High Court seeking to bar Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto from contesting the presidency and deputy presidency, respectively, on integrity grounds. And as Sophia Wanuna reports, the issue of the court's jurisdiction was critical in the dismissal that now paves the way for the pair to vie for their respective seats.
Friday afternoon outside the Milimani Law Courts, supporters of Uhuru and Ruto after the integrity case was dismissed. The High Court has today ruled that it does not have a jurisdiction to determine whether Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are qualified to offer their candidature for president and deputy president.
The High Court has no jurisdiction to deal with any question relating to the election of the president. That includes the question whether one is qualified or disqualified to contest the position of president under the Constitution or other law.
The last legal hurdle that was threatening to forestall the political ambitions of Uhuru and Ruto has been cleared. The 5-judge bench also said that the petitioners had not exhausted other avenues presented by the IEBC and EACC on the integrity concerns they raised about the duo.
Such institutions, for example the IEBC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, are bestowed with the necessary powers to conduct, inquire and take disciplinary action. The court should not descend into the arena of inquiry. Its proper role is to ensure that the inquiry is undertaken to the acceptable standards set by the Constitution.
The court further said that the ICC indictees have not lost their fundamental right to vie for public office, as the confirmation of charges was preliminary and hence presumption of innocence until proven guilty remains upheld.
It has neither been alleged nor has any evidence been placed before us that the 3rd and 4th respondents have been subjected to any trial by any local court or indeed the ICC that has led to imprisonment for more than 6 months. The confirmation of charges at the ICC may have formed the basis for commencement of the trial against the 3rd and 4th respondents. The end result, however, cannot be presumed, neither is there sufficient evidence that at the end of it all, a conviction may be arrived at.
The dismissed petition stemmed from charges of crimes against humanity that Uhuru and Ruto are facing at the ICC.
This is a great day in the calendar of the Jubilee Coalition. From the onset, quite a number of obstacles have been thrown our way in our pursuit of leadership of this country. We are happy that we have now overcome the last obstacle, which was placed through connivance and collusion by our rivals, who had all along thought that by eliminating the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, from the race, they would have shortcut to State House.
The reprieve from the courts today is a major boost to the Jubilee Coalition's momentum as it hits the home stretch in the race to State House. Sophia Wanuna, KTN.
Well, a lot of anxiety unfolded during the day as to when the case will happen. It eventually happened, and these two have been cleared to run for the presidency come March 4th, when this will be done. Also, what happens there is the issue of the court's jurisdiction was critical in the dismissal that now paves the way for the two to vie for their respective seats. And this is a statement by Uhuru Kenyatta, and this evening the Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta has reacted to the court ruling in a statement like you see in your screen there, sent to newsrooms and signed by his Director of Communications Munyori Mbuku. Uhuru says, and I quote, "I welcome the High Court ruling today. It has affirmed what we have always held. The people of Kenya, and they alone, have the power and the mandate to determine the leadership of this great country. Kenya has come of age, and the people of Kenya can never go wrong." End of quote. Well, this is a case, like I said, that has been continuing for long, and people have been waiting for it to happen, and it eventually happened, clearing the or paving the way for the two to vie for presidency and deputy presidency, respectively, come March 4th. And I now take you to James Smart, who has a panel there. James, I keep on saying a lot of anxiety. Was it? And who are you having tonight?
All right, thank you, Eric. You're right on that anxiety bit, but that last hurdle has been cleared, and let's just make sense of it. And with me is Kibe Mugai, who was holding brief for one of the interested parties, and Charles Kanjamo will be trying to making sense of this for us. Kibe, obviously you're happy, elated, and your client is extremely happy as well.
Yes, of course, I'm happy. Yeah, I was part of the Jubilee team representing Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, and the National Alliance, TNA. And the decision of the High Court has upheld most of our submissions and objections to those cases. So we are very happy. But more importantly is that we should celebrate it as a victory for the people of Kenya, for the simple reason that at the heart of this decision was really that the High Court judges ruled that the decision on who will be president and deputy president of Kenya is to be exercised by the people of Kenya and not through the courts. So for me, it doesn't matter that the immediate beneficiaries are people that we represented in court and the party I represented in court. It is also significant now and in the future that democracy has once again been vindicated by our courts.
But what do they say to your opponents? You know, obviously your side is happy, but the people who feel and felt, and the people who took this case in court in the first place said, listen, these individuals have cases to answer. They have a whole track of things that they need to answer elsewhere. Let's talk about this integrity at Chapter 6 and put this into context. This was the first time this Chapter 6 was put into test, and it has ended this way. What do you say to those people who tonight feel this integrity case has just fallen flat of what we wanted as a country?
I think we should not mistake the general issues of integrity and criminal cases, because the High Court had a full chapter in their judgment that deals with what the judges were calling the interplay between Chapter 6 and the Bill of Rights, for this simple reason, that the Bill of Rights, for example, and this is for purposes of Uhuru and Ruto, provides that they have a right to be presumed innocent for purposes of a fair trial. And therefore, on that, the High Court said that the only way that you can uphold the presumption of innocence and the right to fair trial is that in the meantime, you cannot make a mockery of it. If you are saying I'm innocent of something, then you say that I cannot do this, I cannot do the other one, then I'm not truly innocent in your eyes. Number two, which is even more significant, is that the case of the TNA, which what the judge said was correct, was that the issue goes beyond Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, for the simple reason that these elections are about the formation of the government of Kenya and the first government under the new constitutions. Uhuru and Ruto are the candidates of Jubilee. They are not in this alone. There is millions of Kenyans who support Jubilee, and the rights of Jubilee, had it been taken away, it would effectively mean that an easy victory would be handed over to their opponents. And in that regard, the court would effectively have decided who is the next president of Kenya.
To the other side.
And therefore, when you balance the two, the right of Kenyans to have a president of their choice vis-a-vis the unproven allegations of integrity. And this is a matter that is pending before trial. Sooner or later we shall know.
Hang on to that word. Charles, let me bring you into this conversation. And to the millions who are watching tonight and thinking, those distinctions that Kibe is talking about are not clear. Integrity Chapter 6 was very clear and simple. And tonight, what has happened in court has simply just taken us many years back.
I think I agree to some extent with what Kibe is saying. Unfortunately, there's been a trend of trying to simplify Chapter 6, which is not a simple chapter, which is a chapter that deals with general principles especially. And to imagine that general principles trump specific rights that have been established and entrenched in the Bill of Rights, or even in other provisions of the Constitution. So I think what the court was doing was trying to clarify that Chapter 6 cannot be interpreted in a vacuum. It is part of the Constitution. It must be interpreted together with Chapter 4 on the Bill of Rights, even with the Article 236, for example, on the rights of people who are found, who are being challenged with some disciplinary process to have a fair hearing. So I think what the court was doing was trying to make sense of all these competing claims, and it thought that ultimately the petitioners had not exhausted the mechanisms of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. They're not exhausted the mechanisms of IEBC before coming to court. I do admit that there are some spectators who feel that the court ran away from the problem by seeming to say that it doesn't have jurisdiction to deal with the issue. But those who keenly followed the judgment will discover that indeed the court actually examined all the issues that had been raised by the petitioners.
And so Charles, what is the threshold then of integrity as where we are right now? What is that threshold that we say today, if you, Charles, give an example, if you're accused of stealing a chicken in your village, can you run for public office?
I want to say this. Imagine that we go to an elections without Uhuru or Ruto or Raila or Kalonzo, one of the current people. And you have Mr. Kipkoech, who is the president of this country, and he has a rival called Mr. Kamau. And he doesn't want Mr. Kamau to run for office. It's very easy for him to trump up some charges and charge Mr. Kamau and say, now you need to step aside until this case is finished.
So what do we need to do?
So basically, if there is a legal process, you must allow it to continue to completion. If it is a criminal process, it must conclude before you can make conclusions from that process.
Kibe, we need to close it on, but finally for you, was this a win for the country? Was this a win for the Constitution? Would we, 10 years from now, would we look back and say this was a good moment for our country in terms of moving forward?
I believe apart from the decision of Njoya that gave us a referendum that ultimately gave us a new constitution, this is one of the best moments from our courts. And I say this because, one, to the Constitution of Kenya, I believe in clarifying that Chapter 6 sets up an elaborate mechanism under which we can be able to determine who we can to make a finding as to who has violated that chapter. Then this court was actually upholding the Constitution. Let us remember what we call the principle of double jeopardy. This principle of double jeopardy operates this way. You cannot say today that the Hague Court will decide whether Ruto and Uhuru are guilty or not, and at the same time sit at some corner and say that they cannot run from office, and yet the Hague Court may decide to the contrary. Number two, for the people of this country, it is important that by the court holding back and saying let political decisions be made in political forum, there is something else that they said, that in all countries, and they gave the example of Britain and America, if the president is accused of wrongdoing, you actually get him out of office through impeachment proceedings. And in this particular case, they specifically said that if for whatever reason, and therefore hope is not completely lost, if those Kenyans who believe that these people are guilty of impeachment, you need to get enough MPs and enough senators, and we revisit that issue
after
if hopefully
yes,
Uhuru are elected as the president of Kenya.
All right. Let's leave it at that. Charles, final thoughts for you. Is this it for us? Integrity, we've set the standard, it's a precedent. You're happy with it?
I would like to say that Article 73 of the Constitution, which underpins the whole issue of integrity, sets a different test for selected or appointed officers and for elected officers. And I think the standards for appointed officers were not in issue in this particular case. The question was, in the case of election, should we have the Kenyan people make the last decision or not? So I think the court has made an attempt in resolving that question in favor of the Kenyan people. I don't think this is the last word on this issue, because we know that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Electoral and Boundaries Commission did not undertake any serious scrutiny or investigation on issues of integrity of the candidates. So what we hope is that in future, that process will be done, and then we'll enrich the court process if future challenges are made in subsequent elections.
All right, Charles Kanjama, Kibe Mungai, thank you both for helping us to understand this issue, and as you've both said, and clearly, this is not the last word on this issue. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, James Smart, coming to you live from our city center studios, and you've heard it from them and the panels after the integrity ruling that it's not the last word. Now, InfoTrack has released a new opinion poll that shows or indicates CORD and Raila are leading actually with 45%, while Jubilee is coming second with 43.6%. Also conducted during the poll, they said that 89% actually of the respondents there were influenced by the just concluded presidential debate, which happened on the 11th of February, while the remaining 11% were not influenced. Well, I don't have the numbers. Betty Kello has them. Over to you, Betty.
Thank you, Eric. Now, the recent presidential debate had little or no effect on voters. Well, this is according to a just released opinion poll by Infotrack Research and Consulting. Now, the poll, as you'll see, indicates that only 11% of registered voters changed their decision on who they would vote for come March 4th. Well, this is compared to 89% who say the debate had no impact whatsoever. Now, the respondents who indicated that they had changed their minds were then asked which alliance or coalition they now supported. Well, let's crunch these numbers. 38% said that after the debate, they shifted their allegiance to Jubilee, while 33% said that now they support the CORD coalition. Well, further, 14% said that after the debate, they thought Peter Kenneth's Eagle Alliance was better placed to lead the country, while the Amani coalition had 7% of the respondents say they would support Musalia Mudavadi on the presidential race. Moving on, Martha Karua's NARC Kenya had 4.8% of the respondents change their minds in her favor. Father Mohamed Dida of Alliance for Real Kenya, who was by then pretty new to Kenyans, had 1.6% of Kenyans say that they would vote for him. Well, additionally, Safina's parties, Paul Mwite and Restore and Build Kenya Party, both had 0.6% of the respondents support after the debate. Now, when it comes to the respondents who said that the debate did not influence their decision on who to vote for, and that if you remember was 89% of the total respondents, well, they were asked who they still would vote for, and here are the numbers. Looking at our graphics, 46% of the respondents say that Raila Odinga's CORD coalition is still their choice. On the other hand, 44% of the respondents say that they would still vote for Jubilee even after the debate. The Amani coalition was third, with 4.4% of the respondents saying they will stay behind Musalia Mudavadi, while Eagle Alliances was fourth with 2.5% of the people interviewed indicating that they will stick to Peter Kenneth's Eagle Alliance. Now, the rest of the candidates that include Martha Karua, Mohamed Dida and James Ole Kiapi all had less than 1% of the respondents who still support them after the debate. Now, a quick note finally, the poll was conducted between the 12th and 13th of February with 1,650 respondents interviewed in 29 counties around the country. Well, I'm Betty Kialo. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Betty. And that story leads us to a big question tonight. And we're asking you, do the opinion polls influence your voting? Do the opinion polls influence your voting? Well, send your yes or no answer to 8040 and with a brief comment, and we shall sample your responses at the tail end of this live newscast. Moving on, the National Gender and Equality Commission has come to the defense of Wadaya parliamentary candidate Mary Wambui after she was denied access to public functions presided over by President Mwai Kibaki. The commission says the action was blatant harassment and outright discrimination. The women's rights watchdog argues that Wambui is protected by the Constitution, which says all persons are equal under the law. The commission termed the events primitive, as Wambui is also enjoys freedom of movement and association. The TNA aspirant trailed President Kibaki to all three venues he was officiating in Othaya on Thursday, but was consistently denied access by the heavily armed presidential guards. Security officials from the unit have been quoted as saying they had been given instructions not to grant her access to the venues. The Gender Commission has said it will continue to keep tabs on such cases of discriminations, especially as the country gets ready for the elections. Okay, like I said, it's now only 17 days left to the elections, and the campaigns are on a high as various candidates traversed different regions around the country in search of support and votes. Let's take a look at who was first. The Amani coalition were in Bomet County, a region considered a KANU and ODM stronghold. There you are. It has a total of 253,933 voters. Why it is considered the stronghold of KANU and ODM is according to its voting history, with KANU reigning the first years of 1997, 1992 and 2002 before ODM took over in 2007. Let's go to the next one, and it's Ego Alliance. Ego Alliance took their campaigns to Kilifi and Malindi counties. Considered the tourist hub of the country, Malindi has a total number of 56,066 registered voters and is considered an ODM stronghold. The alliance promised to enhance infrastructure, water, health, security and education in the county, which they say are critical policies in their quest for leadership. Next up is the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, which concluded a 2-day tour of the Mount Kenya region, which is considered a Jubilee stronghold. The region has a total of 1.8 registered voters, and the county of Embu has a total of 228,344 voters. And their promise is to open up arid and semi-arid areas of the country through improvement of infrastructure, particularly road network and water supply, if they're elected. Let's go to the only woman vying for presidency. Now, Kenya's party flag bearer, Martha Karua, spent a second day in Ukambani, specifically Kitui County, to champion her party in Charity Ngilu's home turf. She is trying to woo the 321,800 voters to choose her as the next president who will stand for justice. Last but not least, we have RBK, Build Kenya and Restore presidential candidate James Ole Kiapi was in Marigat, Baringo County, dismissed claims by some of his opponents who have termed the March 4th elections as a two-horse race. Believed to be KANU's backyard, Baringo County has a total number of 167,748 registered voters, which Kiapi wants a piece of. Let's start and see the trail of the campaigns. The CORD coalition concluded its 2-day campaigns in Eastern Province with a joint rally in Embu town that was interrupted by hecklers unhappy with their sentiments on the land issue. Raila and Kalonzo condemned the behavior, saying democracy called for freedom of expression. KTN's Karon Derry accompanied the CORD team and filed the following report.
The CORD coalition concluded its 2-day tour of the eastern region with the final rally held in Embu town at the Moi Stadium. As a strategy to woo as many voters as possible, Prime Minister Raila Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka held separate rallies before converging for the final one in Embu town. Kalonzo toured Ishiara, Kiritire and Tharaka, while Raila toured Runyenjes before the two met in Embu town. Hey! Given that Embu and Meru counties are perceived to be Jubilee strongholds, trouble brewed in Embu as it did yesterday at Lara in Meru when Kalembe Ndile launched into an attack on Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta over land owned by his family.
Wakati alinyakua shamba ya jirani, alikuwa anapenda jirani kweli? Huyu mtu anaweza kuja hapa aseme ati anawapenda? Wana mashamba kubwa na kuna watu wanaitwa mashukura kama Kalembe Ndile. Wagawie, hata hakuna kitu watatugawia mpaka leo. Je, wale wamelipa kitu kidogo hawana maneno? ODM!
Huyo ni mtu ambaye amepotea, ajui demokrasia.
While a section of the crowd in Meru walked away in protest yesterday, in Embu today, this group of young men showed their disdain by hurling stones at those in attendance while shouting in a bid to disrupt the rally. This did not go down well with the CORD stakeholders addressing the rally, who maintained that democracy allowed for free expression.
Hii ni funjo inaletwa mbele ya polisi, mbele ya provincial administration, mbele ya serikali yote na IBC. Kesho utasikia wakisema nchi inaendelea sawa sawa.
Wale wanarusha mawe wajue kura za urais asiku hapa Embu peke yake.
Chagua jina langu kama wanaona jina la Raila upendi. Ukiona kama upendi la Kalonzo, chagua Raila. Na sisi hiyo ndio tunasema ili tuokoe Kenya na tuokoe katiba.
Kabila ndio zingine nasema ati hii sijui ni zone fulani, si zone ya fulani. Hii ni Kenya. Mtu asikuja hapa akasema ati mimi ni mtu wa nyumba. Ati mtu wa nyumba. Ati mtu wa kwa. Uliza na Raila je? Raila je?
While lauding their policies, they reiterated that a Accord government would cater for the needs of people from all walks of life.
Hii ni caretaker government. Kwa mimi nataka kuambia walimu wasigome, warudi kazini, wafanye kazi. Tukimaliza hii mambo ya harakati ya uchaguzi tutaelewana nao, manake sisi tumesema tutaboresha hali ya walimu.
And with about 2 weeks to the general election, CORD cautioned Kenyans against making wrong choices.
While concluding its tour of the eastern region, the CORD coalition has expressed optimism of forming the next government, while insisting that it will not be deterred by dirty politics that might be exhibited by their opponents. Carol Derry for KTN in Embu County.
We're still on the campaign trail, and presidential candidates stepped up their vote hunting mission across the country with just over 2 weeks to the general election. The Amani presidential candidate Musalia Mudavadi, campaigning in Bomet, has urged voters to vote wisely when choosing the fourth president. Mudavadi says some of his rivals lack leadership qualities to succeed President Mwai Kibaki for the country's top job. Samogina with the details of more from the campaign trail.
The Amani coalition presidential candidate, projecting himself as the safest pair of hands to take over from President Mwai Kibaki, cautioned Kenyans on their choice of a successor. Musalia Mudavadi warned that some presidential candidates' demeanor portrayed them as unfit to take up the presidential mantle as the country's fourth president.
Kutafuta kiongozi wa taifa ni jambo la maana sana, kwa sababu yeye kwa muda wa miaka 5 ndio atajua kwamba Kenya hii itaenda upande gani. Ikiwa utachagua mtu mwenye hasira, basi mtaona uhasira kwa uongozi wake. Ikiwa mtachagua mtu mwenye utulivu, tena mtaona utulivu katika taifa letu.
Mudavadi took the Amani campaigns to Bomet and Sotik, accompanied by KANU Secretary General Nick Salat, who is eyeing the Bomet senatorial seat. The Amani presidential candidate called for a calming of nerves in the ongoing campaigns as the country enters the election home stretch.
Na mimi na mrengo wa Amani tunamtakia utulivu katika Kenya. Hatutaki fujo, hatutaki ile mambo tuliona mbaya wakati ule mwingine. Tunataka tupige kura kwa njia ya heshima na Wakenya waende mbele.
Elsewhere, Eagle Alliance presidential candidate Peter Kenneth urged voters to use his Gatanga constituency as a model to evaluate his performance track record. Pitching for his resume, Kenneth says if elected as president, he will replicate the same zeal employed in transforming his constituency to transform the country and spur both economic and social growth.
Hatuwezi jenga taifa na ukabila. Hamwezi na hatutaweza. Nchi hii ni yetu sisi wote. Raundi hii ni raundi ya kukataa uongozi wa kutenganisha watu na wananchi wa Kenya. Raundi hii ni kutafuta viongozi ambao wako na maono ya maendeleo peke yake na ambao watatupatanisha kwa maneno ya sera.
Meanwhile, NARC Kenya party leader Martha Karua crisscrossed Kitui County to sell her agenda to Kitui residents. Karua played the reformation card, saying she will fight corruption and impunity and confine the vices to the dustbins of the country's history.
Kama wewe huelezi kutoka roho, lazima ulimi utakwama. Mimi nikatibu chap, wengine ulimi ukafanya nini? Sasa tunaambiwa wale ulimi ulikwama, wakifikiria ile uongo watakuambia ati ndio walikuwa namba 1. Sasa hiyo si kitu ya kuchekesha. Uelewe vile mimi husema kila siku. Hiyo kura ya maono imeingiliwa na ufisadi yenyewe. Wewe wachana naye.
The Jubilee Alliance co-principals Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto stayed away from the campaign scene, taking a break in the wake of the High Court ruling on their eligibility that cleared them to contest for the presidency. The Jubilee pair returned to the campaign scene Saturday on a 2-day tour of the coastal region, just a week after CORD coalition's forays in the region. Samogina, KTN.
You are indeed watching KTN Prime with me, Eric Nzoka, and we're going to take a short break now. And just before we do that, a reminder to tonight's big question that we are asking you: do the opinion polls influence your voting? Do the opinion polls influence your voting? You know the trend by now. Send your yes or no answer to 8040 with a brief comment, and we will sample your responses at the tail end of this live newscast. You are indeed watching KTN Prime, and just ahead, Kenyan elephant population under threat. Will tell you why. Incoming governors in the 47 counties will be required to sign performance contracts after the March 4th polls in order to ensure accountability and good management of public assets and budgetary allocations to devolved governments. This is one of the transition plans unveiled today by the head of public service, Francis Kimemia, as the government continues to put measures in place to facilitate a smooth transition after the elections. Patrick Amimo reports.
At this week's media briefing on transitional arrangements, the head of public service said devolved government units at county levels will manage some of the key national government departments as well as public assets. The constitution provides that not less than 15% of the revenue collected by the national government every financial year should be equitably allocated to county governments. In a bid to reduce corruption and ensure accountability in the management of public resources, the government is currently fine-tuning the performance contracts that will be signed by staff working at county levels, starting with the county governors.
From day one, the governor knows that he's not only a politician, because he's elected in the whole county. He's a senior person in the entire county, but he's also accountable for the public resources that have been put under his charge.
The Transitional Authority has finalized audit of all public assets. The inventory of public assets in each county is now with the county commissioners. Governors will also keep an inventory of public assets in their counties once sworn in office and could be charged for any loss.
The governor must know that in this county, this is all the assets of the county government. The county commissioner must have the inventory of the central government, of the national government. That must be done between now and the general elections. If you leave things to chance, as I said last time, you lose all the assets.
The government says it has prioritized provision of adequate security during this electioneering period and after, and will deal firmly with the cases of incitement to violence.
The security state organs have identified hotspot areas, and security deployed accordingly. It will also come up with a portfolio, a list of warmongers or hate speakers and people who like to threaten peace and security.
NCIC has also trained 290 police officers, and they have supported the police with gadgets of monitoring the hate speech. Those who continue to incite ethnic hatred will soon face the full force of the law.
The Transitional Authority has started recruitment of staff that will manage key institutions at county levels. The government says it will ensure smooth transfer of power and functions from the national government to the county governments. Reporting for KTN, I'm Patrick Amimo.
Now, police in Nairobi have arrested 3 drug dealers in the posh Runda estate and recovered 14 kilograms of heroin with a street value of 50 million shillings. Acting on a tip-off, police officers kept a close watch on the property situated along Pan-Afric Drive and pounced when 2 men and a woman drove into the residence with drugs stashed in a false dashboard of a Suzuki Vitara. It is believed that the drugs, which were packed in 14 polythene bags, originated from Tanzania and were destined for the United Kingdom. The woman of Kenyan origin is said to have been married to a Nigerian man who was deported some years back over drug-related offenses. The 2 men are from Guinea and Ivory Coast and are believed to be part of a bigger drug dealing syndicate operating right here in Nairobi. The latest seizure comes 2 weeks after 4 people, including 2 Kenyan women, were arrested with 4 kilograms of heroin valued at 14 million shillings, respectively. Let's go on now to another story here. Kenyan conservationists are now ringing their alarm in the face of increased incidents of elephant poaching that are now threatening the elephant population in Kenya. Tanzania is reported to have lost almost a quarter of its herd, while Chad saw its population of elephants fall to just over 10,000 in a few years. The illicit trade is reportedly driven by demand for ivory in the east. But what shall it take to stop it? KTN's Wilkista Nyabwa reports.
A convoy of vehicles snakes through the villages. The message blares from its speakers. Today, members of the community in Mara, stakeholders in the tourism industry, and conservationists under the banner of Kenyans United Against Poaching shall undertake a 4-kilometer walk from the Siana Conservancy to Sekenani, creating awareness about the falling elephant numbers in the country. Even the harsh glare of the sun is not enough to stop them. Their reasons for undertaking the walk are scattered across the Mara. Here lies the elephant Tanebo, killed on 24th November 2012. Tanebo was killed with a poisoned spear at the age of 48. While this is the carcass of an unidentified elephant placed at between 40 and 42 years, she was killed on 2nd July 2012. Last year, 20 elephant carcasses were found within the Siana Conservancy, which sits on 30,000 acres in the Mara. In January 2013, 6 more elephants were killed by poachers here. The last killed on 30th January. The Kenya Wildlife Service has put the number of elephants killed in Kenya in 2012 at 384. But with neighboring Tanzania losing an estimated 67 elephants daily, experts say Kenya's estimate of 1 elephant a day may be conservative. In recent years, incidents of elephant poaching have risen, a phenomenon attributed to the rising demand for ivory in parts of Asia.
The China market seems to be the driving force behind a rising demand, and it's not just rising demand, it is massive demand, and with it ridiculous record-breaking prices.
The seemingly easy money it brings has drawn members of the local community into the illegal trade.
Hata leo nikiona ndovu ikiwawa naweza ogopa kusema. Kwa sababu mara mingi tukienda kuni unakuta watu wako msituni wako na bunduki. What do you think wanatafuta? Sini ndovu. Lakini ukija kusema hivyo yule mtu ashikwe, na ndio hii amewekwa mpaka kwa mkono wa serikali. Unakuta hiyo mtu kesho yake amerudi yako nyumbani. Kwa nini serikali asiwachukulia hatua?
This taking a toll on communities that depend on the lush scenery and the wildlife here to earn a living.
In case you come across a carcass, tena mgeni anapata question mark, huyo mgeni hatarudi tena hapo. Huyo mgeni tena anaanza kujiuliza, hapa hakuna usalama, kwa ajili kama ni ndovu inawawa, hiyo watu wanataka nini? Ndovu wakimaliza hizo vitu, si lazima watarudia wageni.
Trade in ivory was made illegal all over the world in 1989, but the ban was lifted in 2008 to allow some southern African countries to sell their stockpiles. This is believed to have exacerbated the problem.
Hapa hatuna ukulima, hatuna njia nyingine ya kujihifadhi. Ilikuwa ni hawa wanyama tunategemea. Wageni hawakuji tena zaidi kwa sababu wanaletwa na wanyama na wanaletwa tena na uzuri wa hii nchi.
The one key factor has not been there, and that is the commitment, the will from the Kenya government as well as Kenyans who are now being informed.
Members of the local community now banding together with stakeholders in the tourism industry, recognizing the fact that the loss of their wildlife, especially their elephants, means not just the loss of their livelihoods, but the loss of their heritage. Wilkista Nyabwa, KTN in Masai Mara.
Well, thank you very much, Wilkista. And you heard it there, that the initiative starts with me and you, and poaching can be curbed, not only with conservationists and the KWS. You are indeed watching KTN Prime with me, Eric Njoka. Time for another break. Business is up next.
The High Court has no jurisdiction to deal with any question relating to the election of the president. That includes the question whether one is qualified or disqualified to contest the position of president under the Constitution or other law.
Welcome back, and let's talk business. The World Bank has raised a red flag over Kenya's high cost of credit. The institution says is counterproductive if Kenya is to attain middle income status and a robust private sector. Here's Joy Doreen Bira with the details.
Despite various interventions by Central Bank and the Kenya Bankers Association, Kenya's interest rates remain high, with the current average stand at 18.15%. This has made access to credit for both household consumers and private sector players unaffordable. And today, the World Bank added its voice to the growing concerns of difficulty in accessing credit, key to Kenya's economic growth. Johannes Zoot, the outgoing World Bank's country director for Kenya, says the institution is working with the government to find out why the cost of credit is still very high in the country. High cost of collateral, poor infrastructure, complicated land tenure, as well as slow judicial processes have been faulted for high-priced loan products. However, the Kenya Bankers Association blames inefficiencies in the interbank market for the bank's lukewarm response to CBK's monetary policy. The World Bank maintains that Kenya has a good financial sector regulation and supervision system, but if achieving a middle-income economy by 2030 is anything to go by, then there is need to cut the bank's prime lending rate to spur household and business spending. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN Business Today.
Regional retailer Nakumatt Holdings has made a comeback to the Thika Road opening of its 400 million shillings supermarket store. The new branch, branded Nakumatt Thika Road, opened its doors Friday and covers a shopping floor space of 80,000 square feet. The new store is Nakumatt's 39th branch, with plans to open other 5 new branches across the region this year. According to Nakumatt Holdings Managing Director Atul Shah, the supermarket chain plans to invest a further 1 billion shillings this year in the rollout of new branches in Kenya and Uganda. The plan, Atul told journalists during the opening ceremony, will also involve renovation of existing branches in that region. East African Breweries Limited has taken a slight dent in its profitability, with high financing costs eating into the business. The brewer announced a 13 dip in pre-tax profit to 5.7 billion shillings for its half-year period ending December 2012. Michael Karanja with the details.
During the period under review, sales by the brewer increased by 10% to 30.6 billion shillings compared to the 27.2 billion shillings recorded in the corresponding period last year. This was largely driven by increased beer and spirit sales across the region. Beer accounts for about 80% of EABL sales, while spirits take up 15%. But a strategic decision to take out debt instruments to finance a 19 billion shilling investment to acquire a further 20% stake in KBL led to a massive jump in financing costs, eroding profitability slightly. This despite posting a 7% increase in operating profit to 7.8 billion shillings.
The reason for that is the timing of the purchase of the KBL shares from SAP Miller last year. So if you recall, that deal actually completed in December of 2011, and so the impact on this 6 months relates to the loan that we took out in order to be able to make that buyback. So that wasn't there in that prior year period.
From a regional perspective, Kenya recorded 12% growth in sales through beer and spirits. Slow economic growth in Uganda impacted sales, growing 3%, while in Tanzania sales grew by 16% despite an increase in tax on beer. The spirits market continues to be a strategic growth area for the business, with KBL keen to invest in the line of business to boost revenues.
Strategy is kind of long term, you need to invest for it, but if it's kind of out there and you don't bring it forward and act on it today, you never get there. So what I was really keen to bring to life was the actions that we're taking here and now, like the launch of Jebel, the launch of Balozi. You know, these are things that now Kenyan consumers are enjoying and are having an impact today.
With a relatively strong performance, the EABL board declared an interim dividend of 1 shilling and 50 cents per share. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
Finally, in business, let's now take a look at the losers and gainers at the end of the week in our financial markets review.